back, newbies and tech gurus. Today we're gonna actually look at how to create the model class for the SQLite for the Flutter database. So this is gonna be the inbuilt database for our Note application. So let's get started. To do that, we need to actually add a dependency over the SQLite database here. So as I'm doing this video, the current version is 2.0. Yeah, so let me quickly add this in a pushspec.yaml file. So you need to make sure you open your pushspec.yaml file and then add your dependency. That is SQLite, and then the version is 2.0.0 plus 3. Okay, so you're going to save this. After you save this, you need to make sure you actually reload it to actually what? Run or include this database into your source code. Okay, so you can see here. All right, so you just save and then it adds to that extension. Exactly. So we need to create another folder in here, and then we're gonna group our models right in there. So let's step into the lib folder, and here we add a folder called probably model. You can give it any name, but let's use the model in order to organize our code. Okay, so inside the model I add a file, and the file, it's gonna be, let's say, the model, no, let me say the note class. Yeah, underscore class, and then dot that. Okay, dot that. Perfect. So we are in that file note class, and this is gonna be the model class for the database. Okay, so in order to add this model, we need to simply type the class and then the name of the what, of the model. So we're gonna call it the note. Okay, so note with capital N, and then we have our curly bracket. So inside our curly bracket, what we're gonna do is to have the variables and also have our constructors, the getter, the setters, and also the map. So what we have to do is that first let's have our variables. So in our database for this note application, we have the ID, and this ID will be used to add note to our database. So first let's have a variable for this ID. So we have ID is an int type, and then let's have a string for our title. So I'm using the underscore because I want it to be private to our class here. That's why I'm using the underscore for the what, the names of the variable. So title, and then we're gonna also have our description. It's also gonna use the return type of string, and underscore description. Okay, so description. Okay, I terminate this. Let me use the small d description, and then we're gonna have another string for our date as well. So the same, and then I change this to date. Another variable will be int. This will be int because this will be the priority. So we'll have the int here, and this will be priority. That is 1 and 2 priority. Okay, good. So these are our variables. Now what are we gonna do next? Next we need to have our constructors, mean converting the variables into the constructors. So to do that, we need to start with the word note, and inside our note we'll have our constructors in here. So how do we do that? It's very simple. we need to just use this keyword in front of the variables. So for example, we're gonna take title first. So title, here we're gonna have this keyword, this dot the title, like this. Yeah, this is a constructor. So this dot let's this dot date, and then the next constructor is this dot uh description. Let me use the priority here, and then this dot description, description. Good. So this should not be a mandatory word. This shouldn't be mandatory. You can simply set date and time and title without typing in description. So in order not for it to be mandatory, we need to wrap it around using the box parentheses. Okay. And then the next one is for these constructors. We have one for setter, one for getter, since depending on how we're gonna use it. So one will have the ID, one will not have the ID. So here we'll be having the ID in here, and then but the name of the constructor needs to change. So let's say this constructor is with the ID, so we call it dot with ID. So this is the name of the second word constructor, because this is gonna have ID starting here. The first constructor does not need any ID, because when we are creating, the ID automatically generates, but when we are editing, sometimes we need to have a way to call the ID. So we need to create this here. So we have this here. So this keyword dot dot what? ID. Perfect. Good. So here we have the ID in here for this particular word constructor. So don't forget to bring the underscore. All right. So what is next? Next, we create what we call the getter. The getter means to get from the database. Very simple. So we call this using the keyword get, and then what are we getting? We are getting the IDs, we are getting the title, and we are getting all that. So to do that, we need to have the getter of ID, and then the ID should be pointed to what? Variable ID itself. This is this local variable, that is the underscore. So just like this, very simple. So this is how we actually define getters. So we have getter for ID, and then we have getter for title, we have getter for description. So this title here, okay, description also here. So getters, and then make sure you change this. This should be title. Okay, this should be description. Description. Okay, then the next one should be priority, right? Okay, this one, yeah, this particular one. Okay, so here, oh no, let's say we have, but we don't actually have to use int for all. Why? Because the return type is not int for all, but priority will actually be int. yes, int, and then the get keyword. Then we have a priority. Okay, but we have underscore map up to this, and then underscore priority. Good. Let me terminate this. So here we will actually return for description. We can't return int. No, it's not possible. We need to return a string, and then for title is also basically string here. Yes, good. For the ID is int. Obviously is int. Okay, good. So now we have now set or finish with our getters. We have our first constructors and second constructors. These are our variables. Date. Okay, priority, and then date. Do I need to set the date? Probably yes, because we will need the date, but the date will also return a string type. Okay, so here get date and then underscore date. Perfect. Good. Date underscore date. Okay. Do we have it here? Okay, so we have date here. Yes, we have it there. String. Oh, date should be string. Yeah, string. Perfect. All right, so we are set here. So our getters are set. Now what should we do next? What we do next is to look at how to add our setters. And for the setters, we need to add what we call the checks, right? So we use the keyword set, and then what are we gonna set first? We're gonna look at setting the date. So date, we set the date, and then we're gonna add checkers to our setters. That is like just a simple function to just check how our setter it's gonna behave anytime we call it. So we have the date, and then the date needs to have parameters. What is the date setting to? It's gonna set and then return a string as a parameter, and then we set a new date. So anytime it generates, and then it sets a new one. So this is the parameters for the setter function. Okay, so the setter inside the date, we need to have this dot date is equal to the new we have set. Okay, so here, this one, this. Okay, so inside the function of the set date, we need to call this dot date. Perfect. Then this dot date should be assigned to our what? Our what? Keyword, not keyword, but our what? Word for the constructor. That is the new date. Good. Perfect. Then we terminate this. Excellent. So this is how we actually code our set or setters. So we use the keyword set and then the date. That is this that we used here. And then what return type? It's a string return type. And then what is the next parameter? The next parameter, anytime we set, it should create a new date, and this new date should refer back to this dot date that is here. Perfect. So let's finish our other set. So the second setter will be our what? Will simply be our, what are we gonna set? Let's set our description as well. Yes, we're gonna set the description here, and the description is also returning what? A string description. Let's use a capital D here. So inside our setter, we're gonna have an if statement to check the number of what words or letters we type inside our this description input field. So we will set it using the if statement. So we say if this new here, if this new description here dot length, the length of the description is less or equal to, let's say, 225, then you need to, if it is less than this, okay, good, but if it is equal to this, okay, if it is good. If it is more than that, then do nothing. Okay, so we say this dot what description is equal to our new description. That is the new what description. Perfect. Then I terminate it. So we use the if to just check how many what words we need to write inside our description input field. Correct. Next, we need to set our priority, and then we need to add the checks. Don't forget about that. So what are we gonna do? Or let me see, this is for this. All right, perfect. So next, I copy this, and then we're gonna use the same for our priority, right? So here we set for this, and similarly the same, and then the priority is actually need to have the return type of int instead of what? String. Yeah, because it's 1 and 0, so we don't have to use the string. We need to use what? The integer. So we have the new priority, and then the new priority here, we don't use length. In the checks here, it should be another way of checking that. How do we do that? We're gonna check that whether it is less or equal to 1, right? If it is less or equal to 1, then we can also, if it's less or equal to 1, or the new is what? Is also what? Equal to, less or equal to 2. So depending on which rules or checks it actually fall in, then it should execute. So 1 is of a certain priority, and 2 is also of a certain priority. So depending on which priority you check, then something happens. So this is the check for the priority. So if new priority, okay, new priority is less or equal to, no, let's use if it is greater or equal to 1, and new priority is less or equal to 2, or less or equal to 2, then something should happen. So this dot underscore priority, and this priority will be equal to the new what? The new priority. Perfect. Like this. Then I call this one Perfect. Next one, let's look at the date. The date will have a very simple check, just like oh, I already called the date. I think we have not done for the title instead. So the title will also check the characters. Yes, just like the length of the description. This one. So we'll only check the number of words inside the what? The title. That's all. So pretty very simple compared to the other one. So the same, and then the new title, and then with the title we will only check the length of words we're gonna type. So almost the same here, and then we'll have a big T here. Okay, then we'll have this here, and then this here with the big T. All right, perfect. So now we have our setters ready, and we have our getters ready. We have our two constructors, and then we have our variable set. Well, excellent. Then inside this, what are we gonna do? We know that we need to actually convert this node object into a map object, because their Sqflite database cannot actually pick values from these setters and getters unless we actually convert these values, this node object, into a map object. So let's create that. It's very simple. So here we're gonna do what? We're gonna convert this object up here into a map object, and the database only read object from the map. Okay, from the map object. So we need to convert that before it can actually work. So how do we do that? To do that, we start with the map, and then with the map it also have two return type. One will be string, and the another might be int or string, but we will use the dynamic return type. Dynamic return type. And for the dynamic return type, dynamic okay, okay. So for the dynamic return type, this can return both string and integer. Good. So we are done with the dynamic return type. So we said the map will be converted to, the object will be converted to map, and to this map is simply like a function, and this function will have some it's gonna have, let me see, we're gonna have our ID in here, and also have our title, description, our priority, and then our date as well. Okay, so let's do that inside our map. So inside our map, we're gonna have, the first one will be another variable with the word map. So like this, variable map, and that is equal to what? This one here. Yes, just like this, and then it will be a function, and we terminate. So this variable will actually do what? Instantiate this map object inside itself, and then here we're gonna have an if statement to check if id is not null. If id is not null, if the id is not null, means the id has a value, then something should happen. If it's not null, what should happen? The id needs to be converted into an object as well. So we use the map, then the square bracket, and then we have the id inside this square bracket, just like this. Good. And then it will be equal to our variable up there, the local variable, that is the underscore dot id. Good. Just like this. So this is string, and we need to make sure we have a comma here, a comma 2 here. Perfect. Good. So this is how we convert objects, the object of the ones we have here, into a map object, okay, for our database to actually pick the object in here to be used in the database library. Okay, good. So after we have this, we need to have this map. So id is here. Good. Now let us convert the others, the other objects. To do that, we start with the map keyword, map, like this. Then our square brackets goes square brackets, and inside we'll have the name of the object we want to convert. So the first one will be obvious, title, and title will be assigned to our local title variable, that is title. Perfect. Like this. So we're gonna convert the others. One, we have the description, we have the priority, and then we have the date. So pretty much simple. Okay, so here, let me take this off, title. Good. So the next one will be description, and then here will also be what? Our local variable description we define up there. Good. So we're converting that to the map object for the database to actually read it. So here will be priority, and then priority will be here, priority, yes. The next one is the what? Is the date, and here is also what? Date. Perfect. Okay. Then we need to return this variable beneath here, this variable here. So we return using the keyword return, and then return that variable map up there. Perfect. So we have actually converted our note object. Let me put this. We have converted our note object into a map object. So this can be read by our Sqflite database. Okay, good. Then next, after you do the conversion, what you have to do is to do what we call extraction. So after you've converted all the objects into a readable format for the note, you need to now extract the note object from the map object. So we have the object stored in here. Now we need to extract this again into the map object. So how do we do that? So let me comment this like extract a note object from a map object. Okay, so extracting that from this, and then so to do that, this is very simple. We need to first call the note and then note dot from. We use the from map object, from map object, just like this. So note dot from what? Map object. And here let's have our parameters in here is map, and map will take two parameters. One is the return type, that is the first return type, string, and then the second is the next return type, that is dynamic. And then we will also have the variable map here. Good. So this map is having a string and a dynamic return type, and this is also what? The next the next parameter for our our extractor. Okay, so after this we need to simply call all the second this one, the second constructors we had here, all this one inside our our last extractor. So just like this, and then I paste it in here. Yes, in here. So how are we gonna do this? This is very simple. This down, that down, this down. Okay, and then we have this. So to do that is the same variable, but we need to just assign it to the map ID, right? So we have this, then you just assign it to map, and the map will have a box bracket, and inside we have ID, like this. Very easy. ID, simple. Then you end the statement. Perfect. So next one will be the title. So we have this title here equal to this title. We end the statement. Next is the map description, and description will be equal to description. We terminate. Perfect. And then we have oh, this is date. Date needs to have date in here. Okay, date. Okay, then we have priority, right? So this one priority equal to priority. Then we terminate. Let's terminate this. Perfect. Then the next one is what? Is description. So we take this from the bracket and then we assign it to description. Very easy. Very easy. You just follow the steps and then you're good to go. Good. Just like this. Okay, perfect. Let me close this guy. So this is all we have to do for our what? Our Sqflite database model class. So in order to actually have your model class, you have a file and then you have a class with the name, your preferred name. Then you look at the what? The database what? Database table that you really want to use. Good. So in our table, we're gonna have the ID, the title, and then the description, the date, and priority. So we first have a variable of this, and we normally use the underscore for it to be private to this class. Then after that, we now define our constructors. The first constructor, we excluded the ID because we will not be using the ID in the sum of them. So we have two constructors. One constructor, we don't need the ID, and then the second constructor, we need the ID. And then we have the square bracket around the description because it is optional. If the person wants to enter something, fine, can enter or not. And then after that, we come to our getter. Getter, we set or we code our getter in this format, and then we come to our setter. Our setter, we add extra layer to it by adding some logics to it in order to control what and what we are inputting or we are setting our values to. After that, then we convert the node object into the map object here. Node object here we convert and then we return it here. Good. So here we have a simple condition to check the ID, and the last one is extract a node object from the map object. Extract the node object from the map object. So we use the node dot from map object. Then we have the parameters and then the simple what this dot ID, this dot, all the what variables we have out there. Peace. So this is actually the end of the class model for our Sqflite database. We're gonna continue in the next video, and then we'd like you to subscribe and also turn on the notification bell so that you receive our next part of this video. Peace. We are out.